Welcome to Cyber School number 1. Here we go. Truman, and we're talking Truman's doctrine today a little bit. We're going to back up and look at World War II. If you can see, I put the PowerPoint on the screen so you can follow along with your PowerPoint at home as we go through this. All right, so World War II, we first, time out here. I'm teaching this to my daughter who's taking AP as well. So I am talking to somebody in the background, so it's not too weird. All right, so there she is. Okay. All right, so World War II, the first thing we gotta do is, Katie, you gotta end the fighting in both Germany and Japan, right? With World War I, they had a big treaty, the Treaty of Versailles, but that treaty, remember, did it pass or did it fail?
Failed.
It failed, right? And that was because when it went back to the States had to, the Senate had to pass a treaty. So this time, they're not even gonna call it a treaty, they're gonna call it conferences. This first conference is Yalta. It's a fun word, Yalta Conference. And that's dealing with Germany. And they're gonna split Germany, as you can see on the map there, they're gonna split Germany into 4 equal sections. You're gonna split it into, who do you think gets each section here?
Russia.
Russia gets a section.
U.S.
United States gets one.
France.
France gets a section for
Britain.
whatever reason. And England gets one, right? So you got 4, Germany split into 4 equal sections. But then we're gonna split in the Berlin, Berlin is in the Russian quadrant. Since Berlin is super rich and valuable, they're going to split that into the same 4 equal sections. So Russia gets a section, England gets a section, France gets a section, and the United States gets a section. So you can see on the map here, they're going to split it up into 4 equal sections, same thing. So that's at Yalta, and they're also going to set up the United Nations at Yalta. The United Nations gives 5 countries a veto power. That veto power means that any of these countries can say no, and then the United Nations can't do it. So which countries do you think would they be valuable enough to give a veto power?
United States.
United States. Woo! Go ahead.
Britain.
Britain. So England's 2.
England. France.
France. I don't know why, but France gets it.
Russia.
Russia. And then we got one more.
China?
Very good, look at you. China is the last one, right? We're gonna give it to China because you can't give it to Japan, you can't give it to Germany because of World War II, and you're not gonna give it to Italy because of World War II, so they're gonna give it to China to balance it off. So if any of these countries say no, then they can't do it. While comparing this to World War I, and Henry Cabot Lodge versus Wilson and the debate on whether or not we should have a League of Nations, should the United States have a say, not have a say, which version is the United Nations like? The Lodge version or the Wilson version?
Lodge version?
The Lodge version, very good, look at you.
Yeah.
Yes, right, because this is basically giving the United States the right to, we can say no, because we reserve that right to declare war, not declare war the whole day. All right, so that we're done with that one. So now we're moving on to Potsdam. And look at our pictures here. Who's this?
Is that Stalin?
That's Stalin. Who's that?
Truman?
That's Truman. And then this guy is not Winston Churchill. That guy's name is Chet Attlee. Chet Attlee. Those ungrateful Brits, the guy saves them from the Battle of Britain, and they don't vote him. Winston Churchill is gone. Chet Attlee is your guy now? Ridiculous. So anyway, Potsdam is going to be the second conference on we're going to deal with Japan. And in Japan, the agreement is that Russia will help attack Japan if we give them Eastern Europe. So when the Cold War begins coming up, Eastern Europe is going to be under communism control. And sadly, we didn't even need it because we dropped the bomb on Japan. We didn't need Russia's help. But that's the deal. We didn't know that the bomb was going to work at the time, so that's why Truman makes that deal. The other piece up here you see is Nuremberg. That's the decision they make at Potsdam to charge the former Nazis with war crimes, the Nuremberg trials. So, all right, moving on. We now need to prepare for a Cold War. Why do we call it a Cold War, Tommy?
Because they don't talk to each other.
Close. It's cold. That means it's not hot. A hot war would mean they're fighting. Very good. They're fighting. But this one means that we're not fighting each other directly. We're trying to spread our influence of democracy as they're trying to spread. Russia's trying to spread their influence of communism, but we never actually do any direct fighting. So you have two groups. We're going to start with making some friends. We got to make some friends. So NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the United Nations. Think of it. World War I, we put our head in the sand, isolation, we didn't get involved at all. World War II, no, we're going to make friends, make alliances, and say if one of us is attacked, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, if one of us is attacked, we're all attacked. And this is all of the United States and Western Europe. Do you think Russia's going to do something in response? Yes. They create the Warsaw Pact in response with Eastern Europe. So NATO is West Europe and the United States. The Warsaw Pact would be East Europe and the Soviet Union. And they're saying, oh yeah, well, if one of us is attacked, we're all attacked. So you're starting to feel this great tension in the Cold War. Next thing that Truman does is he creates the CIA. These are fact finders, as Truman calls them. We're going to go around the country, around the world, to investigate what's going on, especially in Russia. What do you call fact finders?
Spies?
Yes, they're spies. Right. But we're not going to call them spies, they're fact finders. He sets up the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He realized it was very frustrating that he had, during World War II, he had to talk to the head of the Army, he had to talk to the head of the Navy, he had to talk to the head of the Air Force, and he was like, why can't I just talk to one guy and get it all organized? So after World War II, that's when we would create this position, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It's one guy who can then disseminate all that information to the rest of the military. After 9/11, we realized we were very frustrated that we had the CIA and the FBI, but they didn't talk to each other. FBI investigates people here, CIA investigates people around the world, but what if we were investigating somebody around the world and then they came to the United States? The FBI may have a file with them, the CIA might have a file with them. We found with the 9/11 hijackers, we didn't share that information. Same thing here, what he's trying to do is like, we need to be able to share that information. So today we're able to do that. And lastly, this one's just in terms of a political correct change, maybe our first political correct change. The Secretary of War becomes the Secretary of Defense. Because we're not about war, we're about defending our country. Right? It's all about defense. So the Secretary of War position has always been there. We just changed it to the Secretary of War. And then look at your presidential seal. This seal is the new presidential seal. Look at the eagle's head. The eagle's head is facing the olive branch, which is a symbol of peace. With his talons also have the arrows. We always need to have enough arrows in the talons, though, in case we need to go to war. But his head is faced at peace. The original presidential seal, before Truman, the head was faced at the arrows. So it's now changed today to be that one. So we're about peace, but we have to go to war. We need to be prepared to go to war. So pretty neat. That does change. All right, and last piece here today is the Marshall Plan, where we're going to try to spread democracy wherever we can. Marshall Plan, I'm going to show you a little clip and then I'll explain it, okay? So Tommy, you got the clip?
We have given much aid to the impoverished peoples of Europe.
All right.
We have given much aid
Hold on.
to the impoverished peoples of Europe by on simple humanitarian grounds. But as a countermeasure against the attempt by the Soviet Union to communize Europe, the American people saw the necessity for cooperating with the non-communist countries in a comprehensive, bipartisan European recovery program passed by Congress and here being signed by President Truman. This program, known also as the Marshall Plan, is designed to afford eligible nations that margin of help in credit and materials.
There's Truman right there, right?
Their overall economy back to health. Secretary of State Marshall, in placing the plan before Congress, stated,
"Why the United States carries so great a load in helping Europe? The answer is simple. The United States is the only country in the world today which has the economic power and productivity to furnish the needed assistance. The 6 8 billion proposed for the first 15 months is less than a single month's charge of the war. To be quite clear, this unprecedented endeavor of the new world to help the old is neither sure nor easy. It is a calculated risk. It is a difficult program. And you know far better than I do the political difficulties involved in this program. But there's no doubt whatever in my mind that if we decide to do this thing, we can do it successfully. And there's also no doubt in my mind that the whole world hangs in the balance as to what it is to be.
All right, so what this means, let's try to explain this better. The Marshall Plan. I am going to, the United States, we are going to give money to European countries. Give it to you. Woo! Give it to you. Not alone. This is your money.
Thank you.
You have to do 2 things though. Number 1, you got to promise not to be communist. Do you promise?
Yes.
Okay, see, that's number 1. Promise not to be communist. Number 2, and here's the genius part, you have to spend it on American products. Free money, but you have to spend it on American products, which comes back to me. Why is that a good thing? Think about, how is this going to help the United States?
It'll help us grow economically.
How so?
Like if we make more stuff for the European countries.
There it is. If you give money to the United States, they're gonna have to buy American brick, American steel, right? Europe has been crushed by World War II. They need to rebuild their country. When they rebuild their country, they need money to do so. We'll give them the money, but that money now has to be spent on American products. So that's America's steel, that's American bricks, that's American drywall, American paint. These are all going to be jobs that are going to be filled by Americans. So, just keep that in mind, that with the devastation of World War II, everybody's freaking out that we're going to come back from World War II and not have any jobs available. Because all the jobs that we were doing were all airplanes and tanks and guns. So we're going to fall right back into the Depression. But the Marshall Plan comes out of nowhere, and now it's like all these people coming home from the war now suddenly have tons of jobs, and we're fighting against the Russians, the spread of communism, by spreading democracy. So it's a genius plan set up by Truman and his Secretary of State, George Marshall. All right, that's the end of our first lesson.